Everything looks fine. So this particular example where we left yesterday, I had some issues with the unwind segue, but later I fixed it. Um, so this application let me log in, and when I log in, I've been taken to the table view controller because that's where the tables are going to come. I mean the table with the items entered by the specific user is going to come. We have made it this particular add item form, or this particular view controller takes the values and adds the item. We get the successful callback or successful JSON response. This is for login, so successfully added or something, we end up seeing it. So it does add those content whatever we entered. So now time to bring everything or whatever thing added by the user here. There are two ways we may need to load this table. One, as soon as the user logs in, I need to pull all the data entered by the user. This particular web service has to be called. And when the user add a new item, when the user comes back, I should refresh. I should call the same URL again to make sure the added data is also shown in the table. Or anything happens like add, edit or delete, whatever happens, we have to refresh the table view with the fresh data, either deleted or new data added to it. So we have to plan this way. So let me complete the back unwind segue. It was, so it's add edit view controller. So the first responder of this add edit view controller, the first responder means who has launched this particular view controller. Typically the segue will give us an idea. It is the one, this particular table view controller has launched it. So here I need to have the action which is required for unwinding, or which is a callback for unwinding. So let me go there, redefine the function. So anyway, this meaningful name should be an argument UI story board segue. Implement that function. Sorry, here. So those functions have been implemented. Now let us see if it finds in the exit. Finds. This was not happening yesterday. So I just need to have a manual segue because I cannot tie this directly to the save, because the save has to perform a web service call. It has to save the data and should get the success callback, then only it should dismiss. So it should be a manual segue which is pointing to the same. For example, I'm just creating a unwind manual segue because it is saying that manual, because who is going to call, nobody is going to know. So it is saying unwind segue, and immediately your storyboard is putting a warning. The segue initiated by the controller must have an identifier because it's a manual one. Manual segue should always have identifier defined, otherwise it may not know, or we may not give any option to entry or call it. So I'm just going to say back segue, or not back segue. Added success segue. So I just defined the identifier. Now whenever the user click on save button, let us see the sequence what it is exactly doing. When the user click on save button, it gets the username password from the NS user default, because this would have been added when the user successfully logs in, along with the item name, item quantity, item price being created as the format required for a payload, and it calls the web service to the given URL suggested in the documentation. So it's actually this URL. So it makes a call to this URL and sends a payload. Once this line is called, the program executes in a different thread. When the response is received, it arrives at this particular delegate method, and when you get a successful call, time to dismiss the view controller and to go back. So it is actually perform segue with the identifier, the particular segue which you just created. Self or null is possible unless you say. So this manual segue, this segue is actually an unwind segue, meaning it will go back because I called it from exit. So any attempt to call that segue will dismiss it, and it will go back, and also it will leave a callback to this particular function. Even though it doesn't highlight gray, but since we programmatically connected, I can expect a callback in this segue as the user successfully entered the values. So let us see that. See, every time logging is really, I don't feel very comfortable because I've been logging into. Is there any way I can retain the session somewhere? So because I just logged in the previous session, but still want to bring it up. So that part we will come back. I don't know what's the name I gave. Do I have internet? I need to check that as. Okay, it looks like slightly takes time to respond. It may be my server issue. Okay, I am adding an item. When I click save, it sends the data and make sure it's successfully added, then only gets dismissed. So that's the reason we use a manual segue to call an unwind segue at this point, because I need to make sure the data successfully enters the server. After that only I go back and come to the table controller. Here we have to display the consolidated result, meaning all the data entered by the specific user we have to display here. I've already modified this one with the table view controller because I'm going to display in a table. So this is a subclass of UI table view controller. Subclass is a convention, what you call inheritance in a different programming concept. So it's a subclass of UI table controller because it's going to hold a table view by default. So table view controller, it's pretty now everything set properly because this particular view controller has a view. View mean a generic object where all your components can sit, be it a button, be it a label, be it a text input, be it whatever component like a label or anything. The base is a view. On that top of a view there is a table view exist. On that table view there is a table cell exists. So this is a composite view to create a table view. So the table view controller comprises everything by default. In one single way I can drag it. Otherwise I would have to first bring the table view controller and then implement the table view, then implement the cell, and then implement all the delegates or whatever blah blah needed so that the table view could display. So better you can use a table view controller instead to handle the task. One part you have to make sure it has the data source and delegate already set, because with these two being not set, you cannot expect this pragma part of the table view controller is called. I mean, see, whatever the number of selection sections in a table view, number of rows in a section, these part won't be called unless if you see the delegate and data source been set for this table view controller. Otherwise you would have to set it manually. So for example, for unfortunately, chances are there it doesn't see it. In that case, you would have to manually call the set data, I mean delegate, and the view source has been implemented. So that's slightly, so let me click the table view. See this, I disconnected. You may have to put it again. So now we have this data source and delegate set. Otherwise, you can programmatically also you can give. So for example, if it is a shopping list view controller, the header. So assumption is that it is already containing an instance of a table view. So you may have to set delegate you would have to do this if this is not connected through the storyboard, but it is already been done, so I don't need to do that. But if you remember, for web services I often do that, because web service does not contain a view or storyboard or interface builder element, because it is a plain class, but which itself contains some sort of protocol and delegate methods. So I would, if you notice, in each and every cases, not only I initialize and I set the delegates required, then only my pragma mark part of abstract methods getting called. I mean, in this case, the get response from web. Otherwise, it won't call, because the incomplete method body, it needs to know where it is implemented. So that's the reason we are setting them. If at all I have an option through a storyboard, I would have done it. And if you notice that in the registration view controller, I did the similar for UI picker view. Notice this line I have done it, because in this case the picker view was not from an interface builder, because the picker view was programmatically added. Where is the picker view? See, I didn't add IB outlet because it is not from an interface builder, which was dynamically created. So I would have to give it. Had I created from my storyboard or interface builder, I would have given the delegate directly through a storyboard itself. But in this case, I haven't done. So just try to learn the difference. An object can be initialized through the interface builder, and it can be initialized in runtime as well. Runtime means through the program you can initialize, otherwise through the interface builder also that object can be initialized. Okay, so that explanation is sufficient. Okay, we have to make up a web service calls. I'll try to have some methods. I remember a similar method I have given. Reload shop. But doesn't take any argument. I'm going to use this function to call or to refresh the table view. It is always recommended to keep in this way so that I can reuse it in my code instead of directly calling. So let me implement that web service and other required, in this case the protocol. Sorry, I will import. Let me initialize that as well. Property. If you notice the whole design pattern of this application, a lot of steps looks like being repeated. The same thing I am doing again and again, and this is how we construct it. We create certain blocks which could be reusable. And that's how the professional application development comes. So once you design a concept, okay, this is what I'm going to do, you can repeat the same, and it will end up saving a lot of your time, because it gives you a clear idea about how the component is being built with the simple and smaller components. So a discrete small components makes a complex object. So this is how an object-oriented program concept teaches So the same way I have been doing. So everywhere I need a delegate and the web service, I mean the class has to be initialized, through which I make a call to my given REST URLs and expect the callback. Based on that, I handle the result. So let me do that again. So we synthesize web service. And this guy is complaining because one of a method is not implemented. It's been implemented. What else? This one, the delegate is not implemented. I prefer to have them implemented at the end, because the pragma mark we are leaving to tell what thing is being implemented. This is very dense, so looks like we don't have any warnings at this point. Okay, the function what I created here. So before that, let me initialize in the view did load. This is the very first entry point for my view, because as soon as the view is ready, I can initialize all the object required for my application. Okay. My web service is ready, initialized. I can call this function anywhere. Call web service URL, and before doing that, I may need the URL which could pull all the items entered for by this user, and specing URL, and the type we usually define to distinguish for which purpose this URL is being called. So get all item. You may be seeing this particular thing not used at all at this point. Till this point, we will see why it would be useful to define this kind of thing. But before that, let me create the payload. Okay, that's we have to see our RESTful document. What are all the data we need to send? So this is the URL, and looks like this one is a payload which I need to send. And this value should come from NS user default. So because the username password, we keep them into NS user defaults. Object for a key, I remember it is username. It is password. Okay, if you have a suspicion over, we'll verify with the where the login goes successful. So this is what the value, I think it is user underscore, oh this is the one, sorry, key, username and the password. Make sure you enter the same. That's correct. So payload has been created, let us attach that. And the URL which is going to make the call here. This. Sorry. Okay, everything done. One more thing, if you directly call these URLs given in my document, you will always get the similar output because you are trying to make a get call because you are calling through the URL. There is no payload attached. That's the reason the server is responding with a different output. If you make the header properly and set the payload correctly, you will get the desired results. This is the kind of security prevention usually the server contains. Because when a RESTful web service is given as a document, we may also have a temptation to call that in a URL, see what exactly the response comes. Or in any case, this URL exposed to a third party or any kind of hackers, we should not have the essential or maybe critical information exposed to them. So there will be always some sort of exception being called when such a header is not sent properly. So this is the prevention the server is already having. That's the reason it's no permission, some sort of thing it is giving. So get all items. So we may expect a callback at this point. Okay. First thing we have to make sure the given dictionary gives me a kind of affirmative header which is called result. Okay, so if so here you will get all the items when you get a object for a key called OK. Okay, so now we have to serialize, or in this case the NS dictionary, we have to iterate it over to bring all the items associated with that. First point, it gives me an array having a key or attribute name called items. Once I supply it, I end up getting an NS array. So it looks like the entire object is going to be built using an NS array for me. So we have to have that object also created for us. You can have an NS array or NS mutable array, but mutable arrays are having option to add additional items, but whereas NS array can be initialized or it could be refresh in such a way like when entire container is deleted and then recreated. So whatever way you feel, according to the example, both will work. So let me, for safer side, I'll create a NS mutable array because I can have a empty array to start with. Okay. I'll start with NS array if any error comes, because we'll see what exactly. So shopping items. Okay. Synthesize it. Okay. For safer side, I'll have that array initialized. Say like what do you call shopping items. I just have an empty array initialized. Okay. So when the values comes, so let me iterate and point the values here. It is attribute name is items. So first we'll build shopping items. It's going to be from result object for a key set to items. Hope it's items or item. items. So you will get an NS array inside. So this item has to be iterated over to populate the list view. That we will do it. Okay, shopping items at this point I have. Looks fine. So this is where the reload shopping item comes. So when a shopping item is retrieved, probably we can call reload data. So that will make sure the table is refreshed associated with the data source changes. So data source, in this case, I'm going to make the shopping items as a data source for this table view. So when the data source having a new value, it will reload. So we had to connect the data source even though. So it looks like the reload shopping item is the fine point to start. So maybe we have to have the activity indicator. That will be good, but we'll come back to that a little later. So as soon as the view is loaded, I have my web services initialized, and I have a method calling reload shopping item that makes a web service call with the payloads, username, password, and once it gets all the items, it ends up receiving a NS array. That array is going to behave as a data source for my table or table cells. Okay, so let's start with the table modification. So number of section in a table, this is a single view section, I don't have multiple section. And table view number of rows in a section depending on the size of shopping items. Good. And this one, yeah, the label what I'm trying to print on the table cell is also been given to me. It's quite easy to do that. First I need to build the cell. I need a cell identifier. I don't know what's the identifier name I gave while I create the table cell. So let me, it's called my cell. You see that the identifier name I have given as a my cell. So let's copy that. Okay. For those who have a little, you want to recall on how the table view controller works, I have already put the code, and yesterday we discussed about that. So a reusable cell, a table view contains a prototype cell. Prototype cell means a cell with empty or just a placement or placeholder. So that placeholder is going to be repeated multiple times based on the data source associated. In this case, the data source is going to be this particular array. The array is going to have, according to this example, it is going to be for a RESTful document. Had I sent the username password as devs, this particular thing would be repeated 3 times because the content of this particular user item is 3. So 3 times the cell will be repeated with the different values. So that's what it is going to do. First I made use of the cell. The cell has a subview called label because if I see our storyboard, it has a label which we added, and it is the cell does not know what kind of object it has. So that to identify that, I have given a tag number. So a unique ID number I have associated with that. So the table, the particular label could be retrieved using the tag number. So I'm just going to retrieve that. It is 111. Something. You need to typecast because it doesn't know. So cell. Something tag numbers. Okay, let me identify. View with the tag. So it should be 111. So in the cell, it is searching for a tag called whatever we supplied, and it will give me as object. That object, I'm telling it is actually a UI label because I'm helping it to identify what kind of object it is. That's the reason. Typecasting usually, when you not sure about the incoming object type, what kind of type it is, you could not distinguish. You can help the particular compiler or interpreter by typecasting it. Okay, the incoming object is of this type. And we also have for generic object to define, like what kind of object it is. In Objective C or Swift we have ID pointer already, so whatever way you can define, since you are sure about this is going to be a UI label, you are going to use that and with the tag number. So that item name set text, this is where things are going to be a little critical. Based on the data source, shopping items, first thing, object at the index, I need to know the index. Index is indirectly given here. Index path has been given, that could be retrieved using index path dot row. Dot row will give you an integer instance of the particular index. Index path, it's a whole instance of your cell. It is also comprising an index, and then we will get a object, I mean NS dictionary, so that using that, this guy won't give me the suggestion tag. Object for a key. So in one single line I'll try to retrieve them. Still complaining about, am I missing anything? What I'm trying to display is the item name, item underscore name. So item underscore name. Okay. So this particular part is going to be called, and the item name would be retrieved, would be added to the cell, and it is going to repeat as many as time. And of course we'll also give option to delete as well. This block you have to enable in order to have your code either having a editing and deleting option enabled. Slightly swipe from the extreme right, you will get to see an additional option to edit or delete. So that also will enable them. I didn't modify even a single line of the code because we would need to do that, but before that, let's see how the view is going to come up. And this is to identify which segue being called. Everything looks fine at this point. Okay. So everything goes well, we should see the items entered by the user as soon as I log in. Oh yeah, we do see the items entered by the user. You see that the delete option is there. We need to handle the callbacks. I haven't complete that part yet, but at least whatever the user entered is listing down here. Even though table is not being properly what you call grouped or properly designed, at least we end up getting the result. I prefer putting a activity indicator so that because it may take a some time, and also if at all anyway I can design or slightly improve the look of the table view. Let me see. Let me first bring the activity indicator. Usually never find the place there. Okay, whatever the place it willing to be, and finally Strain. I prefer usually a kind of a bigger indicator, but that you need to create your own subclass to have your own design added. Usually this particular indicator is not looking really visible most of the time. Of course I need to hide it. So anyway, this thing is working. So let me initialize this way. Okay, so we go back. When first time this particular block is called, we'll set the activity indicator stop animating. Okay, where that one? And of course we have to start it immediately. As soon as the web service URL made a call and it starts animating, and when it is done with the load here, stop. So the activity indicator will disappear as soon as the data is loaded. So now the data is loaded, but we need to attach the CRUD option at this point, because once I add a new item, for example, I'm adding a new item, it doesn't take effect, it doesn't show up, because obvious reason, this view controller does not know whether the new item has got added or not, or what time it should refresh itself. So that part we have to work on, and also we need to give option to add, edit, and handle the callback of the specific item. So those things we have to do. Okay, where is the unwinding segue? This one. This particular thing is going to help me at this point. Okay, first part, I need to know the headers of my add edit view controller, because for that at least I will come to know what object it consists. Okay, so in this case it is going to be source and destination is going to be source view controller. Okay, so the callback, it is better segue check the identifier whether it is the same. So let me identify that which one it is. The unwind segue, it is called add edit success segue. I leave it after this one. Okay, let me complete it. Add edit view controller. Typecast it, because the source controller, it doesn't know. Segue source view controller. Okay, now I really don't need to initialize that at all, it looks like. All I can do whenever it is coming, you can simply reload it because that particular thing is more than enough. That's more than enough. But of course, if I have anything to distinguish whether it is coming for editing or any other purpose, you can identify that. Anyway, edit and delete, I'll do it in the next session or maybe in the, if at all permits, in the afternoon. So that's a small additions that I can do that. So let me at least check whether the new item gets updated or not. This guy is testing our patience. Is my internet connection broken? Okay, still works. Now I have a new item added. Let me try that. Okay, it does. So whatever item I am going to add, it will refresh itself with the new values, whatever I am adding. Now the next part we have to do, once I click it, I need to take the same values to the added view controller, let the user to edit or handle the delete callback so that the item gets deleted. If you look at the whole bunch of things, it is this particular view controller is also going to make one more web service call to delete it. In most of the other view controllers, where we will be calling only one web service URL, but in this case we will be calling two different web service URL because one is for reloading all the data, another one to handle the delete. So how to, it's actually broken because I haven't added the code, but that is going to make two different web service callback, two different results, and I hope one point you will realize why I gave the additional information for calling the web service callback, or why I am calling it. So from there probably I may put a if and else condition to identify for which purpose the data, incoming data, is going to come. That part I'll take it either in the afternoon session or maybe I take it tomorrow. So we are almost done with this example. This example plays enormous web service callbacks and brings the data, synchronize the data from the server. At this point, this app can be installed in any phone. All it requires the username, password. The user can bring the data from another device to this device because the data is saved in the server. It is not saved in the local device itself. So this kind of an application we will be developing quite often in enterprise mobility from wherever you're going to get placed. So that you can take it as a simple example and make sure you complete it anytime sooner. So I cannot give you enough timeline.